Welcome. I'm Pamela Riccia from livingjoyfully.ca, and today I'm here with Holly Johnson. Hi, Holly.
Hello.
Now, just as a little bit of an introduction, I've known Holly online for a few years now, and I really enjoyed the glimpses into their unschooling lives and the connection that we've had that way. So I'm really happy that she agreed to chat with me for the podcast. And also, so you know, she has a children's book coming out in the hopefully near future that has grown out of her experience unschooling. So I'm really excited about that as well. So to get us started, Holly, can you share with us a bit about you and your family?
Yes. So I'm Holly. I'm 43 years old. I used to be a nurse in theatre, recovery and endoscopy, but I didn't go back after having kids. I love running very much, and reading books probably would be my two favourite things. And I'm married to Corey. He's 45. He was an asset manager for commercial property up till recently when he quit his job, and we took off for a worldwide adventure with our family. He loves all sports and he's really good at most of them. He's particularly surfing. He just loves surfing. I don't think he thinks he's the best surfer, and he's probably not, but he loves it more than anything. He was a semi-professional football player, which is Australian rules in obviously Australia. Yeah. And we both were gymnasts together prior to that. Yeah, so we that's where we met. We both trained at the WA Institute of Sport, and we were friends for, we've been married, we've been together for, I think, for 22 years now, 23 years, and we've been married for 15. Yeah, we have two children. Our oldest is Finn. He's 10. I'll share with what they like.
Sure.
Yeah. His favourite thing to do is thinking. That's what he tells us all the time. It's an unusual thing, but he loves it. And he spends a big part of his day half running, half skipping, thinking. That's how he likes to think and process. Mm-hmm. He loves creating creatures. That's been a big love for a couple of years now. He started out using games to create them, and now he draws them, still creates them on all sorts of games. And he's making his own book, which is called A Book of Creatures. He loves gaming, especially strategy games or physics games where he can play with the physics. So not necessarily what you would think, but yeah, he likes to play around with the physics and watch things go slow and what impact things have. He loves theories, so he's right to watching theories on YouTube about gaming mostly, but also he loves theories in real life. And he loves learning about World War II and religion. He loves discussing those topics, I should say. Yeah, so they're his favourite things to do. And I have a daughter, Teddy, who's 7, and I asked her what her favourite things to do and were, and her number one was organising. She loves organising things. She loves toys, but I think a big part of her love of toys is really to do with organising. She has these amazing setups and spends hours organising everything, and she loves role playing. Really loves role playing. She's quite interested in acting, I think, but she's very shy and has been painfully shy in the past, but she quite likes acting. She loves singing. She spends a huge part of her day just singing, which is incredible to hear every day. Just someone around you singing constantly. Yeah, just all the time. It's just so lovely. And she loves giving tours of her things that she organises. And she also loves Roblox and Minecraft. Because she's been quite shy, she only has a couple of friends she plays with. It takes her a while to get comfortable. So she has a little friend in the US who she plays with. Hasn't been able to play much with her lately, but she loves playing with her, and she plays a lot with Finn as well. They play a lot together. They have a special game that they play called The Story. That's what they call it, The Story. And it goes on for hours every day with these little characters.
Oh.
And they just role play for hours and hours. And so on our trip, we had to bring a lot of these toys so they could continue playing the story. So that's a little bit about them.
Oh, that's awesome. I love that snapshot,
Yeah.
and so many pieces, connect, and some from it, the thinking and the walking while thinking. I mean, some people, that's just the way they like to process it, right?
Yes.
My eldest is very much like that.
Oh, really? Yeah.
You will walk and think, and then, what comes out of it later is just, can be mind blowing.
Yes.
Oh, that's awesome. And the organizing piece too, and setting up stories, and I'm sure most people listening get that too, when the kids have that space to just, do what connects with them, do what feels right in that next moment. It's amazing the things that they can come up with and do, and just sink right into, right?
Yeah. And that was, something actually I learned from you. When she was really, really loving toys so much, and she just, every day she wanted to go to the shop and buy more toys. So obviously that's quite hard. And eventually, as I got my head around it and we found ways for her to do it, she set up lemonade stands, and we'd go straight to the shop. She made really good money, and we'd go straight to the shop and she would spend it all. And on the way to the shop, one of the most incredible gifts I got from learning about unschooling was the joy I felt in those trips to the shop. We would be sitting in the car and she would just be bursting with excitement over her own hard work. And I just felt, even in myself, so much joy taking her there and browsing the aisles and waiting to see what she would buy. It went from something that could have been seen as, spoiling, and I'm sure lots of people around us thought we were, because she had an incredible amount of toys at home. But it just wasn't like that. It was a wonderful experience. I kind of miss it, actually, going to the shops with her.
Oh, I know that the open-endedness of it.
Yeah.
Just the weight and the energy changes completely, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Just like browse and just not worry about what your reactions are. Because so often at first we're worried that, if we get excited with them, they're going to want to buy it. And so we're always tempering our actions and reactions through that lens until, once you can release that, and with that freedom too, you're watching them completely with their eye versus our lens, right? And then you can see the choices that you're making, and you can see that the things that they're choosing make sense and are serving a bigger purpose for them, right? Rather than just I need to buy this, right?
Yes.
So different.
And the gratefulness that I just found the gratefulness. She just always had this look in her eyes after we had been to the shop. It just was a look of love, like just, and gratefulness of that, I had made that effort to make that happen for her. It was the opposite of what you hear will happen if your child gets too many toys.
No, that's such a great point. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so I know that your family's journey started with your son in school, right?
Yes.
As did ours. Yep. I guess my youngest Michael had started even junior kindergarten that last year. So I was just looking to see if you would mind sharing some of your experience there, just because there are a lot of people too whose kids are in school and they're considering unschooling, etc. So I thought it would be great if you could share that.
Finn started out going to a Montessori pre-kindy. I didn't know that much about Montessori, but I thought it would be a way for him to explore. Sorry, I just got distracted. A little visitor. So we sent him to a Montessori kindy. He he was a different baby. We knew from the beginning that he was a little bit different. He wouldn't conform from the beginning. Even as a baby, I could see I was going to have to change my expectations of how life would be. He was really strong-minded from the beginning, and I couldn't say no to anything, which sounds really odd, but he just had this way of just sort of looking straight through me and ignoring me. And I found that when I explained to him, even as a young child, he would, if it was a vase, if I explained, you can't touch that because it's Nana's vase, and she'll be sad if it breaks, he would just stop. And so, that had continued on. Obviously, 3 years I'd been parenting him that way and never telling him off, never really saying no without explaining why. And then I sent him to this Montessori pre-kindy that, unbeknown to me, was very strict. I explained how we did things at home, and they seemed quite responsive, but that was not what was happening behind the scenes, unfortunately. And so they began to view him, I think, as very naughty. He wouldn't do what they said, obviously. And they ended up, I think, they ended up manhandling him a little bit because they couldn't control him. He wouldn't let anyone control him. And so we left there after about 5 months, after a very bad experience. He only went 1 day a week, but it had an enormous impact on him, enormous. He had no separation anxiety before he went there. He came away with terrible separation anxiety. And something had changed. So we kept him home after that for a while, and then we found another school. And that was a really, really gentle school. That was I think, Reggio Emilia. That was the method they used. It was very child-centered, very loving, very nurturing. And he went there and he loved it. He loved it as much as I think he could ever love a school. The teachers were really kind to him. They were so loving, and they could see all his wonderful qualities. He wasn't like the other kids. He didn't conform. He was so strong-willed, and he had interests that were vastly different to the other kids. They really tried hard to support it, but his separation anxiety at that point was so bad that I was at the school till 10 o'clock every day. I was back at 2 o'clock. He would climb over fences to try and get to me. It was quite extreme separation anxiety that then began. And so I guess he did a year of kindy, and then we put him into pre-primary the next year because the teachers thought that once he was full-time, maybe that would make it easier separating from me. And it didn't, but he started to become very withdrawn. So he became very quiet and withdrew. And instead of chasing me out of school and, trying to climb up these really high fences, he just hung his head and walked in, and he stopped talking. And that, to me, the teachers thought that was a sign that he was doing really well. But that, to me, that was much more worrying to me. I could just see that he was breaking. And the other thing that was happening was, while he was at school, he was starting to get a reputation from the kids as being naughty. So we were in the playground one day, and I overheard a little girl say to her brother, "That's Finn, he's the naughty one." And when I approached the teachers, they were horrified. They tried to make it really clear to the kids at school that Finn wasn't being naughty. He just liked questioning everything, and he, just had a different way of seeing the world. But they were very young, the kids. So to them it was black and white. If you don't do what the teacher says, you're naughty. If you do what the teacher says, you're good. That's it. And so he was starting to say things like, "I'm naughty, and that's because I'm naughty." And that just wasn't language we used at home ever. So that was concerning me a little bit, what messages he was getting about himself. Mm-hmm. So we pulled him out, and that was how we came to homeschooling. It happened quite suddenly. We just suddenly, I spoke to my husband about it, and within 1 week he had said, "Let's pull him out." Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. It,
Mm,
it awesome as in you found it. I know we were just a few
yeah,
weeks between when I discovered homeschooling was a thing and when it's like,
yeah,
hey, let's try it, because we've
yeah,
tried so many different things and worked with different
yes,
teachers and,
yeah,
did all those things, um, and could see that affecting,
yes,
certainly
yeah,
my oldest, right? And
yeah,
thoughts about himself, how he
yeah,
saw himself, the unhappiness and the huge difference between, say summers when we were off and we were all home together versus when
yeah,
when he was going to school. And I really I like sharing other people's stories of what that experience is because, it can look very different
yeah,
for different kids and how
yeah.
they find it challenging. So thank you very much for sharing that piece.
That's okay.
And let's dive into then how you did discover homeschooling and how that evolved for you guys into unschooling.
So we started out, I guess, traditionally homeschooling. Not, I mean, I suppose when he was young, because at this stage Finn was 5.5 or yeah, about 5. He was about to turn 6 when we pulled him out of school, about 5.5. And Teddy had just started a pre-kindy, so she went for one term for 3 hours, 3 hours a week. So that was her experience with school. And so she was still quite young. And Finn, as a young kid, he had already learnt so much, so much.
Mhm.
His knowledge of science was in some areas greater than mine. So when we started homeschooling, I was really aware that all I needed to do was support him. He was super curious. He was learning so much already, and it was just a matter of supporting that. But I was I wasn't comfortable not teaching, or I guess, I don't know if teaching's the word, but I can't remember how I thought about it back then. But I was not comfortable with him not learning to read, not learning to write, and not practicing maths. So although we didn't have any curriculum for anything else, we certainly did sit down and try to practice reading, writing, and maths.
Mhm.
Maths was fine. He loved doing maths, so that was never a problem. All I had to do was find something he liked to do, and he would, that was no problem. But reading and writing, that's where we started coming unstuck. He hated it. He hated it so much. And I kept persevering for about 6 months, just to, I would each time pull back because we were really butting heads. And that, I suppose, is the first time that we'd ever butted heads. Like to me, he was such an easy kid. I know other people were finding him challenging in those environments, but to me at home, he'd never had a tantrum. He just was delightful little happy boy. And that was the first time we butt heads when I wanted him to learn to read and he didn't want to.
Yeah.
And again, it's that, this is not what I want to do. So I'm not going to do it. And so obviously that's where the path that ended up leading us to unschooling, because his anxiety got so bad, he was not able to do anything. He was not able to brush his teeth. He was hardly able to eat. He couldn't get dressed. He couldn't wear clothes because it was so uncomfortable. He stopped talking to everyone except Teddy and I. He wouldn't talk to my husband. He wouldn't let Corey touch him or get anything for him, not even a glass of water. He stopped leaving the house, and he couldn't have me leave the house either. He had to be next to me 24 hours a day. And so obviously when you're in that state, it's not possible to try to learn to read or write or do maths. So everything just fell away. I didn't know what anxiety in children looked like, not severe anxiety. And so Finn was very aggressive at times. His aggressiveness came out of almost like pain. Anytime anything went wrong, the smallest little thing, if he knocked something over or he couldn't do something he wanted to do, it was almost like he was in extraordinary pain. And he would just lash out at anyone. I think it was so uncomfortable. He just had to get rid of it. So our house became just a completely different place. We couldn't have anyone come over, not even my mum for a while. He couldn't talk to anyone, and it could be quite violent at times. And we didn't know what to do. We sought help from professionals, but that seemed to make it worse. And one day I remember looking at my husband. We were standing there and we were watching him, and he was under his bed sobbing uncontrollably. And I said to Corey, he's all alone. He's got no one. He doesn't even trust us anymore. He's just pushed us away, and he's got no one. This can't go on. And it was an odd thing to do, but I booked a holiday for myself. And I went on a yoga retreat with a friend who was running it to Italy. And I spent 2 weeks doing yoga, crying, and learning about gentle parenting. So I'd had this book for a while. It was Dr. Laura Markham. I'm not sure if you're familiar with her. And I hadn't had the chance to read it because home was just chaos. So I couldn't even read a book. And so it gave me the opportunity to start learning about gentle and respectful parenting. And I just didn't stop reading that entire trip as much as I could. And when I wasn't reading or doing yoga, I was in the shower crying. And I think I cried for 7 days. And then one day the tears just stopped and I felt enormously better. And then on the way home, I just had this sense of just total renewed energy. And I came home, and thank goodness my husband is so flexible with this sort of thing. I walked in the door and I said, we're changing everything. We're changing the way we parent. We're changing the way we school. We're changing our lives. And we just have to do what's right for Finn. We're going to listen to him, and whatever he says, that's what we're going to do. No matter what he does, we're going to love him. Whether he hits or yells or screams, we're just going to love him. We're not telling him off. We're just going to love him unconditionally. And so from that moment on, we just completely changed everything we were doing and changed our lives. And we really stopped pushing him to go out, because at that stage I was still trying to get him to leave the house. And within a few weeks, I could notice a huge difference. He started reaching out to me. And I could feel that there was a little bit of trust, and he was letting me back into his world. And so I knew within a very short period of time that we were on the right track. And so we just went that way. And then not long after that, I got in touch with a lady called Jade Rivera, who isn't an unschooler, but is a big advocate, I think, for gentle parenting. And she actually runs a micro school now. So she helped me learn a lot about Finn and his reactions and what they meant. And then from there, I met some unschoolers in Perth. They had a weekly meetup called Minecraft Club, where all the kids would go to this lady's house. It was incredible. And she had all these tables set up with unlimited Wi-Fi for everyone. She'd organised it all, and the kids would play Minecraft all day long. And this beautiful, warm, loving environment of parents who totally supported their kids' gaming. And so as Finn started to feel better, that was the one thing we could do. We started going there once a week. Sometimes we couldn't stay very long. And then I met a couple of really, really special friends there who I'm a bit emotional, who really, really helped me with my journey. They were extremely special, and I honestly don't think we would be where we are without that support. But everyone at this Minecraft club were just beautiful parents, and you could just see unschooling in action. So I that was, I guess, around that time. I think someone there introduced me to your podcast and I started religiously listening. I started religiously listening to your podcast and learning everything I could. Some of the things I find hard to let go of. But over time, they all just dropped away. And really, it was almost easier that we had this anxiety in the background, because the only thing that my husband and I cared about was Finn's mental health, and that we ended up with a boy who could function, because he hadn't been able to, he hadn't been functioning at all. So that was our main goal. So nothing else really mattered. So it was quite easy to, in that way, stay on track.
Yeah.
To not worry about anything else. Yeah. Just let everything else go. It just, in some ways, it felt like we had an easier journey than some other people who, like for instance, none of our relatives, because they had seen what our home life was like, all of our family was incredibly supportive. We never had anyone who, second guessed us in any way. So we were very lucky in those respects.
Mm-hmm.
And it also helped keep me focused on what was most important.
Yeah.
And so that's how we came to unschooling in that long way.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing. It is such a, I love the way you put that everything else just fell by the wayside, right?
Yeah.
When you're focused on helping them where they are. And, that you took that moment for you in your journey. Like, you can see that as kind of, your point where you needed something that was going to like break the path that you were on. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
To do like a 180, 90, however many degrees you want to talk about it.
Yeah.
Turn in what you were doing, because, you realized that what you were doing wasn't working. Like you had seen where you guys were, and, that you took that time that you needed for yourself to figure it out, that was going to add so much value over the long term, right? It wasn't a running away piece. It was, I need regrouping even, right?
Yes.
To just really see where you were. And like you said, to you were reading the other book, bringing in information, new ways of doing things, new possibilities that you couldn't see where you were when you were.
There was no space for it. Yeah, there was just no space at all. And it also helped me. I mean, Perth's a quite small city, I suppose, in comparison to many cities around the world. And we're also very isolated. And we just couldn't get any of the kind of help that we needed. Every psychologist we saw was just, their first question was, are you a permissive parent? And it was just, I just couldn't get the help. It wasn't out there in Perth. And so by going away and starting to change the way I saw things, it just broadened my perspective. And I started reaching out to other places in the world, really, looking for help. That was the first time I really had thought, okay, Perth is not, I can't get the help I need here. What else is out there? I hadn't really ever been in a position where I needed to do that before. Yeah. So
that sounds really familiar.
Gave me that opportunity.
Because, I too, Joseph was 9, almost 10.
Yeah.
He was 9 when I discovered homeschooling. I didn't even know such a thing existed, right? It wasn't until I was on the internet doing more. I was literally researching how to help him at school, gather information that I would go over with teachers and principals and all that kind of stuff, And it was then that I finally came across the term, because in my, family environment, and in our, neighborhood, nobody had ever heard of such a thing, right? Nobody knew that it existed. So it was once I reached beyond that I discovered different possibilities, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So I was hoping, so for people who maybe are finding themselves trying to help their children
Mm.
with anxieties and fears and things like that. I mean, we've gone through some of that as well, and it was for me, when one of my kids didn't want to leave the house and didn't want me to leave the house, and that lasted for quite a few months. One of the big mind shifts for me was that shift where I could accept this, like
Yeah.
you were saying, you were
Yes.
convincing to go out, and I'd be like, hey,
Yep.
would you like to go do this? Maybe let's do. So
Yep.
at first I was looking outside, trying to look for things that
Yeah.
would be enticing enough to try and draw him out. But instead, once I shifted and said, hey, this is where he is. It's okay. We're back to, it's okay to support it. Like going to the store,
Yes.
like whatever it is, something
Yes.
that seems unconventional. But when we can make the shift to embracing that,
Yes.
that was a big one for me, when I would actually help his cocooning. Like you said,
Yes.
when you came home, it's like, we're going to do whatever he wants. We're not going to fight with him about any of these things. And to embrace that kind of cocooning stage, because if they're needing it, they're needing it.
They're needing it.
They're wanting
That's it.
There's a better way.
Yeah. And I still
embrace that and support that and help them find fun things to do in the house, even if what they wanted to do was watch the same shows over and over and over again. Like building up lots of blankets and pillows and getting comfy and bringing toys and bringing food, whatever was supporting them.
Yes.
That just made all the difference in our relationship, I think, as well.
Absolutely.
Really long-winded way to say. Could you share a bit about your experience helping him through fears and anxiety?
Well, the number one change, I think, was listening to him. It sounds crazy now, given how far I've come.
Oh, I know the feeling.
The number one thing was going from listening to, unfortunately, experts, to and everyone, anything at the time I was reading, to listening to Finn.
Yeah.
So that was my number one thing. Within weeks of just listening to him, he reached out. Within, it was really maybe it was even quicker. I can't remember now, but that listening to him, what do you need? And then following through, and what he needed was to not leave the house. Yeah, he needed to not leave the house. And then, so in doing that, I found help online. So that's where I was able to get the help online from the lady in the US. And she, interestingly, she backed Finn up completely. She said he's in a permanent state of fight or flight. And so every time you take him out, it is incredibly stressful for him. It takes him days to recover from one short trip out. Well, we couldn't go to the supermarket, but, just a short trip anywhere. That's days of recovery.
Yeah.
And so you're putting him under enormous amounts of stress. So Finn knew exactly what he needed. I just didn't know how to listen. Yeah. So listening to and I think I was afraid. To listen, because what if he didn't know what he needed, which also is crazy now. What if he didn't know what he needed for himself? But that was scary. That was a big leap in parenting for me. Although, funny enough, when he was very young, that is how I parented him. But then somewhere along the line, I got very confused, I think. And I think the expectations of what society expects really clouded my view and changed my parenting. Mm-hmm. When we were home and he was young, it was very easy for me to be such a responsive parent and do what worked for him. But as he got older and I felt like he needed to fit in, I felt like I was doing him a disservice by not helping him to fit in. And, because no one was going to treat him like we were treating him at home. So then I started worrying that it was my fault, I suppose. So it was a shift back to that, listen to what he has to say. And you mentioned it straight away, the absolute, for me, it feels like, I like to call it unconditional acceptance. I just unconditionally accepted what he said and how he was. I completely stopped placing any expectation on him at all. And that was another shift, and it was a really important one. And, where he was right then lasted for probably 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
He was not able to do anything for himself for a very, very, very long time. And that acceptance that that's okay. And maybe, I don't think I ever for a second thought it would always be that way, but I did remind myself that it might be that way, and that was okay too.
Yeah.
And accepting that. Jade had mentioned to me that sometimes these sorts of things can take years, all the way to a teenager. For instance, she knew kids who that anxiety had lasted that bad till they were teenagers. So that was helpful, knowing that it could last for years and years. And then it was about adapting our home to make it the best environment it could be for him, but also for Teddy. I worked really, really hard on making sure our home was everything it needed to be for her. In some ways, we were really lucky because she was very, very shy. So she was very comfortable at home, and all the things she wanted were at home. She wasn't really looking for friendships at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So she got into toys, and that's how we ended up fully supporting that. I played with her for hours every day. Whatever it took to make that home happy. I got really, really good at hacking everything, completely hacking our lives to suit ourselves. So once I sort of shut our doors, I did have a period where I shut a lot of friends out because I didn't really understand what we were going through. And I didn't know how to explain it. I just didn't know how to explain it to anyone. And so that was helpful. I didn't have anyone to justify anything to. But we had some great times. We ended up hacking Christmas and had some of the best Christmases we could have. Finn had problems sleeping, and still unfortunately does have problems sleeping. But because he would stay awake for such a long period, we were worried about how Christmas would be for Teddy. She would want to get up early, what would happen with the presents, all those sorts of things. We couldn't have anyone over. So Teddy and I would spend weeks preparing the Christmas feast and decorating the house. And we changed Christmas to a Christmas Eve feast where we would stay up till midnight, and we would open all of our presents on Christmas Eve we would have this big dinner, and then we would open all our presents after dinner instead of the next morning. And that way, Teddy got to open her presents with everyone. She didn't have to wait for Finn to get up. So the majority of her presents were opened on Christmas Eve, and we would have this, I think the first year it was just the four of us. And then by the next year, I think we either had Corey's family or my family over, just our parents. And we just celebrated it that way. And then the next morning they had their presents from Santa. And it was just, it was only a couple of presents. And so Teddy didn't mind waiting for Finn because she had this, and also she slept in because she'd been up so late. So it was just a matter of working out, like, what's the most important thing for Finn? What are the obstacles going to be, and how is that going to affect Teddy? That was really important. Mm-hmm. In making sure that Teddy's life was still special and enjoyable, I guess, more than special, just enjoyable. Yeah, so I got really good at doing things like that and getting creative with changing everything, and I just didn't worry about what anyone else was doing.
Right?
Yeah.
Oh, I love that, because you were talking upfront about unconditional acceptance, right? And yeah. I think, there's a vision that we have, but I think there's a couple of steps deeper that we get into that, because, when you think of unconditional acceptance for somebody, it's like, not contradicting what your child says, but there's the step deeper of dropping expectations.
Yeah. Yes.
Right? Because that brings an energy to it. And the other piece is the timeline of it, right? That this could go, maybe this will be, maybe this is his life. Maybe this is, the way it's going to be. Because that too, like, it gives us different lenses that we're looking at them through. And so even though we're accepting hi and not, contradicting them at all, when we can get to the depths when we are accepting where they are without any expectations about they're almost together. Expectations that it'll be over soon, or this is just a phase. I just have to outweigh the phase, right? There is that energy of embracing that comes when you can get rid of those filters, isn't it? And you had such beautiful examples of embracing that creatively. All of a sudden the world opened up and we can do what works for Christmas. It doesn't matter. We can, birthdays, days.
Birthdays, that was another thing we have to.
We have to fit us. The world opens up when you realize it's okay to release those expectations and that you're not losing anything by doing that.
No. In fact, you gain, because I don't know what changes inside you, but something about fully accepting your children, where they are and who they are, changes the relationship so much that there's just this enormous amount of joy. I don't really know whether it's just joy that you feel yourself or whether I still can't really describe that joy when you really give them what they need. And that acceptance in that moment, it's just so much joy.
It really is. It really is. I know, and I understand the not being able to explain it. I mean, in my Unschooling Journey book, I call it this undercurrent of joy that just flows through all your day. That's all I can do. But truly, it's there. You can find it, but it is our work to do, right?
It's not. It's not. No, they weren't doing anything. Right? No, it was all me. And my husband, he just doesn't mind. I'm really lucky because he just goes along. He just doesn't, I can't really think of any time where he's said, are you sure you know what you're doing? He just, okay, that's what we're doing now. Fine. So that's been great as well. But just getting back to Christmas, I just have to tell you one funny story. We, I think it was 2 years ago now. It could have been 3, where I started to worry about the whole Santa thing. Mm-hmm. And Finn has always really not liked people lying to him. It's always been such a thing. Mm-hmm. And he got to an age, I think he was 7, and I started feeling like he would, he would be very upset at me when he was going to find out, and he would really view it as though I had lied.
Yeah.
And so I decided to tell him. I think it was a couple of months before Christmas. I posed the question: if there was something that all the adults know but none of the children do, would you want to know? Even though it was a beautiful surprise and it's supposed to be a wonderful thing, would you want to know the truth? And he said, of course, I would want to know the truth. So I told him about Santa, and he just straight away was fascinated. He wasn't upset in any way. He was fascinated that people could hold this secret and none of the children knew, and the lengths that the adults went to create this story was just incredible to him. He just couldn't believe it, and he really saw it in such a special way. It was actually wonderful. But then he said to me, you have to tell Teddy now. I was like, oh no, she's too young. She's too young, and she's not. He wasn't really a kid who was that into gifts. So, but she was so into toys. I just thought it would completely ruin it. And we left it for a couple of days because I wasn't sure how I felt. And then anyway, he said to me, you have to tell her. She hates being lied to as well. And so he said, can I just ask her if she would mind being lied to? The same way you asked me. So he went ahead and he used the same wording. And she said, Finn, I hate being lied to. And he said, I told you. He also calls me Holly. So he said, I told you, Holly. She doesn't like being lied to. And anyway, so then I was like, oh, where am I going to go with this? What's going to happen? It's just going to destroy it. So I started to tell her, and then it became the most wonderful thing. So she looked at me with these massive eyes and she said, so you and Corey are our Father Christmas and Mrs. Claus. And I was like, yes, yes, we are. And she was just, she loved it. She couldn't believe that everyone's parents were actually Santa and Mrs. Claus.
Oh.
It was just and then so obviously that's where we went with it. It just became this wonderful story about parents doing this beautiful thing for their children. And they were the real Father Claus and Mrs. Claus. And then what came from that is that Corey and I would dress up. And we started dressing up and delivering the presents. And then, they would be in bed watching us, peeking out at midnight, waiting for the presents after our big feast. They'd go to bed and they would peek out. And the first time we did it, Teddy was so excited. She was shaking. She covered up her head with the doona and she was just shaking underneath it at seeing the real Father Christmas and Mrs. Claus. So, even that, even now, it's just Christmas for us is a beautiful thing, despite them knowing everything. And we are often just alone, the four of us.
Oh, that's spectacular. I love that story.
Yeah. So I guess also that comes down to trust, trust in your children and yourself that something good will happen. Mm-hmm. I told them the truth and I trusted, I suppose, that something, it would be okay. Mm-hmm. And it was better than okay. Christmas became better.
Yeah, no, that's wonderful. Because it is that trust piece, right? And it's the trust in not knowing what direction it's going to take, but the trust in knowing that you'll work with wherever it goes.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
You guys will make something happen from wherever people are in the moment, right? I get it's hard to explain, but again, once you've been through that a few times, that trust really develops. And you know what? It almost becomes excitement, doesn't it? Curiosity.
Oh, yeah. Where will this lead us?
And this is at a left field. I wonder where we're going to end up with this, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, so I would love to hear the story behind the children's picture book that you're working on and where that's taken you.
Okay, so a couple of years, that's an interesting story. A couple of years ago, we were home a lot, and that's when I started writing. I started writing my experiences, and I wrote a children's story, which is not this one. This is my second one. But we were doing some traveling. Finn wasn't comfortable leaving home very much, but we decided to go on a trip to Bali, and once we got him there, we couldn't believe how much he relaxed. And it was like this weight just lifted off his shoulders. So we noticed it straight away. So we started trying to incorporate much more travel into our lives. And then one day I woke up and I just said to Corey, I think we need to get out of Perth. I think, I think we need to leave. I just have this feeling that we need to go and travel the world. And then the next day, someone knocked on our door and offered to buy our house. It was so strange. It was really strange. And anyway, we weren't ready to sell, and Finn certainly was not ready to leave the house. So that just, that was just in there. From that moment on, it's a sign. The seed was planted. It was a sign to me. And, I think a year passed, maybe even longer. And we went for a trip to Japan. And then while we were there, Finn just one day said, I want to travel around the world. I want to go and see all the countries there are to see. And so Corey and I looked at each other and we were like, yep, we don't know how we're going to make this happen, but let's do it. Anyway, so that was in the January of last year. And then while we were in Japan, actually, that's how the news story started. We found these little resin cubes, And Finn picked one with a dandelion in it because he loves dandelions, and mine had a little red seed. It was a seed from South America, and it was called a happiness charm. And when we came, Finn just loved these two little things. They had beautiful little meanings. And when we came home, we started talking about what they could mean. And he's quite a philosophical little fella, so he really likes, discussing what things could mean. And we spend a long time doing that. And so we came up with this story about this seed and how, maybe we could imagine that this seed is inside of our body. And, as it grows, those things that it grows out into are all our interests and our loves, and what would that feel like? And so, we talked about it every night in bed for a long time. We'd just snuggle up and, we'd hold the seed and we'd discuss it. And so I think from there, something happened with Teddy one day. And so Finn and I had been discussing our little theory behind the seed. And so I used the analogy with her. And it really worked. And as I, told her our analogy, it really helped her. And so I sat down and wrote that into a story. And that was April, I think, of last year. And then it was the whole process of, now I have to find an illustrator. That was very difficult because I didn't have a lot of money to spend on it. And so I just kept waiting. I had grown enough as a person by that stage where I realised that if it was meant to be, something would come, something would work out, and I just trusted that. I didn't really worry too much about it. And I spoke with a few people, and it wasn't really going to work out with them. They were great, but I couldn't afford them, basically. Mm-hmm. And then this girl popped into my life who was a friend of my sister-in-law's, and she was looking to get into illustration. She hadn't done it before, and she was willing. She read the book and she loved it, really loved it, and she wanted to work on it, and she was willing to do it at a price I could afford because it was her first book.
Yeah.
And so she started working on that, I think, December last year. And it took much longer than she thought because she has two small children.
Oh, yeah.
And my whole philosophy was, take your time, don't put it before your children, because I wouldn't be doing that, so I don't want you to do that. So finally, I think she has sent me the final copy yesterday. And, she's also been doing the layout and the formatting and stuff as well. So turns out she could do everything. So it was like this amazing gift. She was also a graphic designer. So, yeah. And then the funny thing about the story was, as I realised I was going to be able to publish it, we started really living it. So it became really important in all of our lives, including my husband. We talked about it so much, and it became so important that we started really living it. And so a few months before we left, I think we left Perth at the end of July. A few months before, Corey was he had quite a stressful job, and he was away in Melbourne every third week. They just asked him to increase that, and that we had the choice: do we go to Melbourne, or do we quit and do we take this chance to go on this holiday? Finn already wants to travel the world, so we'll be supporting that. It was a dream of mine as well, and we can really grow our happiness seeds, so to speak. Let's see where this takes us. Imagine having a whole year together, what that would be like, And so although that idea of traveling was, mulling in our heads for a long time, it really wasn't. It was only about 2 months before we left, or maybe 3 months, where we put the house on the market and sold up, and Corey quit his job. And so the story is a huge part of our family now. We talk about happiness all the time, to the point of, we were walking down the road the other day, and we've been doing a lot of reading on World War II, and we're talking about religion, I think, and how that, comes into wars sometimes. And Finn said to me, I love talking about World War II and religion so much that I get a huge hit of dopamine. And I think it's so much, it's probably equal to what people who are taking drugs. That sounds terrible. people who are taking drugs get. That's how happy it makes me. So, it's talking about happiness is just a huge part of our lives now, and both the kids know how much we are supporting them in that way to grow whatever interests they have in any way we can find possible. And when we were at home, a lot of our life while Corey was working was about the kids. I put myself on a back seat and I really focused on them. But since traveling, it's been much more equal. We're all very aware of everyone's loves, and the kids are really happy to help us. Sometimes it's hard, but, they're really happy for us to sort of spend time doing what we want to do as well. And they're really supportive. And it's a really easy way to talk about it because we're, it's such a big thing in our life right now, this book.
That's to have that little external lens to bring to things, a framework. Can really open up conversation, can't it? Because it takes a little bit of that pressure off.
Yes.
Of it being so absolutely personal when you can relate it to something else.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Oh,
So
I love that.
Yeah. We're all really excited.
Yep. And so it's going, like you said, it's going well so far. How many places, where have you guys been?
So we started in Greece. We did Mykonos, Santorini, and then Crete. So we did 2 weeks in Greece, and then we went over to Italy, and then we went over to France for 5 weeks. We had within that time frame, within that 8 weeks, 5 of those weeks were with my parents, which was really lovely. The kids loved that. They really loved it. It's been a highlight for them having my parents with us for those 5 weeks. So we did France for 5 weeks, and now we're in Ireland. We're staying at my sister-in-law's dad's house while I finish doing the book. We've been here for a month. And it's just funny. It's just funny what unschooling gives you. Everyone who's Irish says to us, "What are you doing here this time of year? Like, it just rains, you're crazy." And all we can see is the beauty. It's incredibly green, and because it rains so much, there's rainbows all the time. And we've been able to go caving and rock climbing and hiking and things that we can't do in Perth. And the kids are just thriving. They're absolutely thriving.
Oh, yeah. That is wonderful. That is wonderful. Yeah. So at this point on your journey, I was just curious, what do you love most, or let's use the happiness meter about having chosen to embrace unschooling?
I think this is hard. There's so many.
I know.
But they're all, they're all interwoven into one. But I think my number one is the joy that I am able to feel every day over the tiniest little things.
Yeah.
I just can't go past that, I don't think. And sometimes I wonder if it's because we had such hard times. We couldn't go to the shop. So now when I go to the shop and the kids run around, so Finn's gone from, and this is one of the things that unconditional acceptance and love has given him. He's gone from not being able to enter a supermarket to running into the supermarket where he has his own basket or trolley, collecting all his favourite foods and waiting at the checkout. So that's, is just incredible where we are now. It's just incredible. Like, sometimes I look at the things we're doing and I can't believe, even just a year ago, we were still struggling to have people over to our house. Yeah. So those experiences of walking to the shop, shopping, just the joy I feel every day. And I would not be able to feel that joy had we not gone down the unschooling path, I wouldn't be able to appreciate it like I can now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's probably my favorite.
I love that so much, Holly. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And I want to thank you so much for taking the time where you are, finding a spot. I really appreciated that. It's so awesome. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you so much for having me. And thank you. I've already thanked you, but, thank you so much for all the work that you, Anne and Anna, have done. I'm forever grateful for the work that you have put out there and how it has helped my family on our journey.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you. Before we go, where can people connect with you online if they'd like to touch base?
Probably the easiest is Instagram. I have Facebook, but at this stage I hardly use it. So my Instagram is wholeheart_living. I'm pretty sure.
I'll double check and put in the show notes.
And my website isn't up and running yet, but I'm pretty sure it will be by the time this is aired. So that's Holly Johnson, www.hollyjohnson.co.
Oh, sweet. That's awesome.
So I'll have that up as well.
Yeah, because then people can, follow and check out they'll
be able to see my book there.
How the book goes. Yep. And make sure you let me know when it does come out so I can share that as well so people know. I love it.
I will. Thank you.
Sending me a little preview.
You're welcome.
Oh, thank you very much again and have a wonderful day.
Thank you. You too. Bye, Cam.